Texas A&M at Arkansas. One of the most exciting matchups coming up tomorrow in the college football slate. Welcome back, everybody. This is Gavin Lee, and this is my second video on this channel. And yes, as I mentioned, we are now going to look at Texas A&M on the road to the 3-0 Arkansas Razorbacks. A top 20 matchup as Arkansas is ranked number 16. Texas A&M is ranked 7th, which I personally think is too high. First off, let's look at Texas A&M so far this year. Their first game was, I guess they did what anybody would do if they played Kent State. They won 41-10, and they had King in that game. Though King was, I'm not gonna lie, he didn't impress me. 21 for 33, which is good. 292 yards, which is good. 2 touchdowns, which is good. You want to know what was not good, and what really just made that performance kind of go to me? 3 interceptions against Kent State. Okay, Kent State, a program like Texas A&M, who finished almost who was in strong consideration for the playoffs last year. Okay, so he just pretty much threw 3 picks. Though the rushing game with Isaiah Spiller and Akane were really good, as they both went over 100 yards. Akane with 124, Isaiah Spiller with 113. And they both, Akane went for 10.3, Spiller went for 6.6 yards per carry. And then Ananias Smith, he is probably Texas A&M's #1 receiver, who had 8 receptions for 100 yards that game. And Caleb Chapman had 4 receptions for 91 yards. So there is hope in their passing game. And then Chase Lane and Weidermer were 41 and 36 yards. And the Texas A&M defense did their job during that game. I was impressed with the Texas A&M defense. You know, they're looking like Texas A&M, strong D-line, some good linebackers. And then week 2, Texas A&M at Colorado. I was actually able to catch some of this one. It came on right after the Ohio State-Oregon game. And I'm going to be completely honest with you. Calzada did not impress me. Yes, it was his first ever college football game. But even then, I would not have hope if I was a Texas A&M fan after that game with Calzada. And then the Texas A&M running game it wasn't really there. They didn't really use the game, even though Akane averaged 5.6 yards per carry, but he only had 9 carries for 50 yards. So they didn't really use him. And Isaiah Spiller had 8 carries for 20 yards. So they were able to shut down Spiller. And Calzada was the second leading rusher with 28 yards for 7 carries. And they had Weidermeyer. He had to step up that game, but he had 66 receiving yards. The defense for Texas A&M was really good, as they picked off Brendan Lewis once. And yeah, they just did a really good job with that game. Sorry, I'm just trying to see if they had fumbles. I'm using my laptop to kind of give me a quick glance, as I'm trying to figure out the teams and see who I'm going to roll with as I go along. If that's my approach for right now. If you have any better approaches, please feel free to comment down below. Let me know. But let us see. So PV had the interception. I don't know if I don't see any fumbles. Maybe there was a fumble. I was only able to watch part of that game, but yes. And then sorry, I have a cold. But Then they took on University of New Mexico, who was 2-0 at the time. They shut them out 34-0. And they picked off Terry Wilson once. And they held down the running game for New Mexico very well, allowing only 85 yards in total from New Mexico State. Calzada had a better game that game. He had 19 for 33 completion. He threw 275 yards, and he had 3 touchdowns, 1 interception, but usually that's pretty acceptable. And then Isaiah Spiller came back that game. It looked like a king, he kind of fell off a little bit. He had 9 carries for 29 yards, so 3.2 yards, which isn't too bad. That's not too bad of a quote-unquote down game for a running back. But Spiller did lead that game, 15 carries for 117 yards and 1 touchdown. And then DeMoss was the leading receiver with 2 receptions for 100 yards and 1 touchdown. And then Akane was more utilized in the passing game, it looks like, as he had 3 receptions, 45 yards, and 1 touchdown. And then Lane, Weidermeyer, Muhammad were all the next receivers, but their yards aren't really that flashy. So Texas A&M, rocky first 2 games, but they had a convincing win last week against New Mexico. New Mexico isn't quite a joke this year, as they have, they've been pretty dominant. They had a 10-point win against HBU. I know nobody knows who that, but they did beat New Mexico State by 9 points. New Mexico isn't too bad as where they're at, but 34-0, that is very impressive to me. And let us take a look at Arkansas so far this year. So Arkansas's first game was against Rice, where they won 38-17. And it looks like KJ Jefferson, he was 12 for 21, so he was barely over 500, though he did have 120 yards, 1 touchdown, 1 interception, but the running game wasn't too bad at all for Arkansas in that game, as Traylon Smith had 22 carries for 102 yards, so that's 4.6 yards per carry, and 1 touchdown. And then KJ Jefferson did it all on the ground, it looks like, that game. He almost had 10 yards per carry, 9 carries for 89 yards, and he had 2 rushing touchdowns. And yeah, they had a really good game there offensively. Like I said, they won 38-17 against Rice. And then they beat Texas, who at the time was ranked 17th, I believe. Anyways, Texas was ranked. They had a convincing game against the Louisiana Raging Cajuns. They came in, and Arkansas was like, not in our house, and they won 40-21. Arkansas, KJ Jefferson didn't have too bad of a game. He had 10 rushes for 73 yards. So he was a really good dual threat. 14 for 19 in his passing game, 138 yards. Though he did have 1 pick, it was still a pretty good game, as now we have learned truly that KJ Jefferson is a dual threat quarterback. And Traylon Smith doing it again on the ground. He had 12 carries, 675 yards, 6.2 average, and 1 touchdown. So he did a really good job that game. And then passing game, it was more evenly distributed once again. Tyson Morris was the leading receiver, 1 reception for 45 yards. Traylon Burks had 5 receptions for 37 yards. And just that Arkansas defense just doing wonders, as John Ridgeway had 1 sack, and he had 3 tackles, 3 assisted tackles. And Grant Morgan had 4 and half a sack. Zach Williams had a sack. So Arkansas is showing that they can get some tackles. They all had to assist each other a little bit with the tackles, but Arkansas's defense is showed up that game, and Texas's offense is not a joke, as we saw in week 1, and then we saw again last week. So, of course, they had Heward as their quarterback at the time, and obviously Casey Thompson's better than him, but still, that was a pretty impressive performance. And they held they held Bion Robinson to 70 yards, which 69, I guess, but 70 yards practically. And they held him to 3.6 yards per carry. They really did shut him down pretty well. I mean, that's a weak game for Bion Robinson. So they did a good job stopping him there. And then Arkansas had a dominant performance against Georgia Southern. I know it's Georgia Southern, but still, they won 45-10, which is what they're supposed to do, and is establishing even more that Arkansas could be a real team this year. Okay? Jefferson had his best offensive game in the air that game, 13 for 23. But get a load of this, 366 passing yards, and 3 touchdowns. Phenomenal performance by KJ Jefferson. And it looks like he wasn't quite on the ground as much. He did have 5 carries, 18 yards, 3.6 average. And then they had a running back, Dominique Johnson, step up in that game. 5 carries, 72 yards, 14.4 average. And Raheem Sanders, too, stepped in that game. Traylon Smith had not too bad. He had 8 carries that game, 39 yards, 4.9 yards per carry, so that was pretty good. But Raheem Sanders and Dominique Johnson could be complementary backs to him. And A.J. Green, too, he had 7 carries for 37 yards, 5.3 yards per carry. So Arkansas might have a little bit of a running back by committee going on right here, possibly, that they could really use on Texas A&M, which would be good because Texas A&M's D-line, as we saw last year, can really collapse the pocket. So having different running backs that can confuse them might help. And Treylon Burks had a really good game, 127 yards, 3 receptions. And Devion Warren and Tyson Morris and Warren Thompson all had 60 yards and 60-plus yards. And, yeah, Arkansas just did a great job that game. Trey Williams had 1.5 sacks. And Jalen Catalan had 6 tackles. So looking at this, overall, I'm going to be completely honest. Arkansas looks like the better team to me based on what we've looked at so far. Now, Texas A&M does have a 9-game winning streak against Arkansas right now. But if there's to be any year where Arkansas breaks the streak, why not this year? They've had the start that they've had, and they have a good dual threat quarterback in KJ Jefferson. And I feel like, if they really make, oh gosh, why do I keep forgetting Calzada's name? Yeah, it's Calzada, right? Yeah, Calzada. If they make Calzada uncomfortable with their defense, I don't see why they shouldn't beat Texas A&M. Like I said, Texas A&M, I do not believe deserves to be the number 7 team in the country. Yes, I believe they're a top 25. Yes, they've had a few good wins so far, but I don't know. It just, Texas A&M seems fishy to me. Yes, they have 2 good running backs in Kane and Spiller. And if Texas A&M is to prove that they're a true top 10, they have to come out tomorrow just ready to pounce on Arkansas. They have to show the country that they deserve the number 7 spot tomorrow. Because for me, They have not shown that they deserve the number 7 spot. I feel like there's many teams that probably deserve that spot more. I feel like Penn State would deserve that spot more. Wait, no, Penn State's above them. I'm stupid. But I feel like there's some teams out there that probably do deserve that spot more than them. And it just blows my mind. But, we don't know until they play the real opponents. And what's at stake for Texas A&M here? Besides the winning streak and their other winning streak, which is 10 straight games since their last loss to Alabama last year. They will be facing Mississippi State, who has a Will Rogers and a revitalized offense. They've been having a really good year so far. And then they'll face Alabama. Then they'll go to Missouri. Then they'll face South Carolina at home, and then Auburn at home is coming up. So Texas A&M has really got to get it going if they want to have a successful year and possibly another playoff bid type year. And Arkansas will be opponent that they'll have to prove it against. So far, it looks like I believe Texas A&M is favored to win, according to and they are favored to win by 5 points. And it looks like they have, according to ESPN, a 57.4% chance to win. I'm going to be honest, I don't believe that they're going to win. And I guess let's go with score predictions. I want to say this game will be 20s, 30s. And this will probably be a tighter game. It'll probably be neck on neck. I want to say, though, Arkansas wins this 31-24. That is my final score prediction. And I want to predict that KJ Jefferson will just be too much for that offense. And that Texas and Arkansas will find some amazing running backs to complement. Will find their running game. They'll continue off their positive running game promise and help Traylon Smith out. And that is my take on the Texas A&M Arkansas game. What are your guys' thoughts on this game? Let me know down below. Who do you have coming home? I guess tomorrow we will find out whether or not I am right. And I hope you guys liked this. And I hope you guys have a great night. And I will see you guys in the next video. Peace.